All right, we're still looking at exponential functions and how the graphs look. And this is important in case the EOC has questions on the non-calculator part. Obviously, if you have a calculator, you can type these in and see what the graphs look like. But if you have a question on the non-calculator part of the EOC, you would have to know how to find and graph these functions. So, again, we're looking at the parent function first. F of x equals 3/2 to the x power. This is the most basic form of the function given, so this is the parent function. So we have a transformation horizontally and vertically for this one. So that means our x's and our y's will change. Our horizontal movement is changed for our x, and our vertical movement changes the y. So given the table, here we just took x's, we picked x's, plugged it in, and found the y's. Okay, we've done this in the previous video, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, just refer back to the first video. And then for this one, we're going to change the x by adding 5. Remember, minus 5 moves it to the right 5. So we're going to go from -2 to +2. -1 going right 4 takes us to +3. And if we go right 4 from 0, we get to 4. And then we go 1 and we go right 4, that takes us to 5. And 2 right 4 takes us to 6. So that's what happens to our x value from this horizontal shift right here. That's a terrible arrow. I can't draw on the computer, sorry. All right, so that moves our x, and then this moves our y down 4. So the -5 is going to take each one of these down 5. So 0.4, this is repeating, so it's close to 0.5. If we go down from there, it's going to be to -4.5. And that would be repeating as well. Again, these can't be graphed exact, but you know, correct terminology, we're trying to do that. So that would be a repeating decimal as well. That would make this one, if I go down 5 from 0.6, about -4.3, 4.4, but we'll put 4.3 because it's repeating. And then from 1, if I go down 5, that puts me at -4. And if I start at 1.5 and I go down 5, that's going to put me at -3.5. And if I start at 2.25 and go down 5, that's going to put me at -2.75. All right, and then since the blue table represents the function that's given, we just use the parent function in order to find this using transformations. So then we're going to graph those points. So 2, +2, and -4.5, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 3, -4.3. And 4, -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 5. And 6. All right, so since this shifts down 5, we know that our isotope is going to be at -5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to approach this line here. And still exponential growth because 3/2 is the same as 1.5. That's greater than 1. So it is a growth function. The domain in range is going in both directions forever, so that's going to be all reals. our range in this case is going to be y greater than or equal to, not equal to, but y greater than -5. And then as x goes positive, y is increasing, so it's going to be infinity. And as x goes to the left, it's approaching this isotope, so it's approaching -5. Which means this is also going to be -5. So that's usually easy to figure out. And then our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is not an exact point here. Again, you'll have to plug in 0 to see what that number is. So I would just take your calculator real quickly, do 3/2, plug in 0 minus 4, which is -4, and then subtract 5 from that, and that's going to give you kind of a nasty decimal. So plug in 0 for x, so we're going to have 0, and then you're going to get about -4.802. So that's going to be my y-intercept. Okay, one last example. This one, we're going to look at how it reflects across the x-axis, and it's going to be a stretch because it's multiplied by -2, and then it's also going to be shifted to the right too. So let's look at what happens to the x first. So this number here shifts it. Remember, if it's negative, it goes right 2. So my x values are going to go right 2. So from -2, if I go right 2, that takes me to 0. If I go right 2 from -1, that takes me to 1. And then right 2 from 0 is 2. And then from 1, I go right 2. And from 2, right 2 is 4. So that's how it changes my x value. And again, that comes from the horizontal shift right here. All right, now what does this do? Okay, so the negative is going to reflect it across the x-axis, and then the 2 is going to stretch it. So this is going to affect our y value. So we're going to take our y value and multiply that by -2. So you're probably not going to have one of these on the non-calculator part. So it'd be easy to find your table of values by just graphing this, but to do it by hand, it's good to know how to figure these out if for some reason you need to graph this without a calculator. So take the y values and multiply each y value by -2, and that's what goes here. So if I do 0.06 times -2, that's going to give me -0.125. And if I do 0.25 times -2, that's going to give me -0.5. And if I do 0 times -2, well, that's going to give me 0, but that's going to shift me down to, let me see. All right, so I'm not going to multiply that by 0. I'm just going to shift that down to, that's going to be my y-intercept. And then I'm going to do, oh, well, I'm looking at the wrong number. No wonder. Okay, 1 times -2 is -2. 4 times -2 is -8. And then 16 times -2 is -32. Again, this is affecting my y value, and this is affecting my x value. All right, sorry, I got myself confused there for a minute, so I had the 1 instead of the 0. I got my table mixed up. All right, so now that I have my new table for the function I'm trying to graph, then I just have to graph these ordered pairs like before. So I'm going to go 0 and -point, it's going to be just below 0. and then 1 and down a half, and then 2 and negative 2, and 3, negative 8, and then the 4 and 32 is not actually going to be on here because my graph paper is not, it doesn't go down that far, which is okay. Alright, so then I'm going to sketch my graph. I know that the negative 2 reflected it, so now it's approaching 0 from the bottom here. And kind of follow those points. Alright, so it is going left and right still forever, so domain is all reals. My range is everything less than 0 now, where it was before it was greater than 0, but now it's less than, so make sure you have the less than symbol. And then when x is going positive, positive infinity, my y's are going down, so negative infinity. And then as x approaches negative infinity, it's getting very close to 0, so it's approaching 0. Alright, that means the isotope here is still at y equals 0. And then my x-intercept. My x-intercept is whatever my 0 is, so it's on the table here. So it's going to be 0 and negative 0.125. Now, if 0 wasn't one of the numbers in the table, remember you can just take 0 and plug it in for x and solve to find your y-intercept. And that's it for graphing exponential functions and transformations of exponential functions.